Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of my home lab Angel Server series. So, if you didn't watch the first video, obviously I'm going to recommend you go and watch that before watching this one. But I'll try to give you a little recap. So, in the first video, I basically just got Proxmox installed as a hypervisor on this old Dell Optiplex here. I got it pretty cheap, used on eBay, so I'm starting with some pretty basic hardware here. It's not a professional setup by any means yet. And after I got Proxmox installed, I went ahead and installed an Ubuntu Server VM as well. But right now, that Ubuntu Server VM isn't really doing anything useful or impressive. So in this episode, I'm going to be working on some user management within the Linux OS a little bit, and I'm going to be getting some basic security up and running, as well as getting Docker installed so that I can actually start running some containers on the server. But before I just go ahead and jump into the commands and me figuring out all the steps of setting this up, I wanted to give you guys a little view of my stack that I'm going to be working on setting up here. So on the top here, we've got the Optiplex hardware, obviously. It's the PC that the Proxmox hypervisor under it is running in. The Proxmox hypervisor is just the software that manages all the VMs that I'm going to be running inside of it. And then I got the Ubuntu VM installed inside of it as well. And now in this episode, I'm going to be adding Docker, and we're going to be adding Docker containers inside of it eventually. So Docker is just a service that you can install on Linux that it manages apps, basically. It's the way I like to think about it. Docker containers are just services such as Minecraft servers, which I'm definitely going to be setting up. Oh my God, something just fell off my desk, which I'm definitely going to be setting up. And yeah. And one more thing that I almost forgot to mention again, that I forgot to mention in the first episode, is that I started a GitHub repo with a lot of documentation to go along with my home lab. So if y'all want to see all the steps that I'm taking here, the tutorials that I am using to set this up, and all my hardware, what else? The breakage log. So any issues that I run into, I put in that breakage log. And yeah, there's a lot of useful information there. So if you want to check out the GitHub repo, the link will be in the comments and in my about me or my bio on YouTube, because I can't seem to get verified to put links in my description. I don't know, it's complicated, but now that I've got all that rambling out of the way, let's jump into the actual VM and start getting some work done here. Now, the very first thing I need to do here is get the QEMU agent up and running. Without it, Proxmox can run the VM, but it doesn't really know what's happening inside of it. Alright, so the very first thing I did was I went into my Proxmox dashboard here, and I went to Options, and as you can see right here, I have QEMU Guest Agent enabled. This QEMU Guest Agent is what's going to allow Proxmox to communicate with the VM better, and it's also going to allow us to take screenshots, which is going to be very useful if I mess something up in the future, which I almost definitely will. Now that I have the QEMU Guest Agent enabled in the Proxmox dashboard, I'm just going to go ahead and go to my command prompt on my desktop here and do SSH into the Ubuntu server VM. I'm going to go ahead and type my password in. Alright, and here I'm updating the package list and installing the QEMU Guest Agent, which is just going to allow Proxmox to communicate directly with the virtual machine. And then here I'm installing unattended upgrades, which automatically installs important security upgrades so the server stays patched without me needing to manually update it all the time. Now the next command I'm going to run is sudo UFW allow open SSH. I'm just going to allow SSH through the firewall so I don't lock myself out of the server when I enable it. Now, the very next step, I'm just going to type sudo UFW enable. This obviously just enables the firewall, which one thing about this firewall is it blocks all incoming traffic by default. So that's why I went ahead and did SSH first. And now that it's enabled, the firewall is up and working, and it's only allowing SSH traffic in. So now with this next command, I'm just making a directory for all the Docker data to live inside of. I obviously don't want to put it all in the home directory because we're trying to keep the system organized, and this is just going to make all the containers that I add to Docker much easier to manage later on. So now we created a directory for the Docker files to live inside of, but we created it using sudo. Now, since we use sudo, the folder or the directory is going to be owned by root by default. So this command is going to change ownership, chown, -r, which means recursively. So any file that's created in this directory will be owned by me, the user, and by my group. So I won't need to type sudo every single time I want to do a command in this directory. Now my server is set up and ready for Docker to be installed, so I'm just going to include a little explanation in my own words of what Docker is. So Docker just allows us to run our applications or our services in their own little containers. So the containers make these services much easier to manage, and they prevent them from interfering with each other. That's really all that Docker does. And this next command that I'm going to be running is just going to install Docker. It's going to actually download the Docker install script and then run it automatically, which is going to give us all of the needed packages and get Docker installed. So by default, Docker commands have to be ran as the root user, so I would have to put sudo before every command anytime I wanted to do a command in Docker. So I just went ahead and did this user mod command that adds me to the Docker group, giving me permissions to run commands in Docker. This next command creates a volume called Portainer data. One thing I thought that was pretty interesting learning about Docker containers and how they work is the data that they store in volumes, is persistent. So even if you completely erase the Docker container, all your data is still going to be there if you reinstall it. So if you need to troubleshoot the container, you can just delete the whole thing, reinstall it, and all your data is still there. I think that's pretty cool. Now, this next command is pretty scary. Listen, if you look at this, you're probably like, what the hell even is that? And I would agree because that's what I would say too. What the hell even is that? But if we break it down piece by piece, it's not so complicated. So first, well, why is my camera doing that? Need to get a better camera. So first, this command just simply launches the Portainer container using Docker. So it says, we'll break it down piece by piece here. Docker run -d. -d means detached mode. Definitely not looking at my notes here. It means it runs the container in the background. And -p is for ports. So it's going to expose the ports so that we can actually access those ports from the browser and launch our Portainer dashboard. And then name Portainer, that's pretty self-explanatory. We're naming the container Portainer. And restart always. So anytime my VM gets shut down and it boots back up, the Portainer container is going to start automatically. The next command, -v. Okay, so the next part there, -v Portainer data, that is just connecting the container to the volume that I was talking about earlier, where all the persistent data will be stored. So that if the container needs to be erased for some reason. I have something in my eye. If the container needs to be erased for some reason, all the data is still there. See what I'm saying? And if you look at that very last part there, Portainer dash CE latest, that is just simply telling Docker to download the latest image and run it. That's where the container comes from. Now you may be wondering, we installed the Portainer container, but what is Portainer? Well, I'm glad you asked. Portainer allows us to manage our containers in Docker from this little web interface here. So instead of having to do all those long Docker commands, we can actually see a interface that makes a lot more sense to most people. So this is just going to make managing all the services running on my server a lot more easy. And that's all for episode 2. So in this episode, just to do I even need to recap? I mean, you just watched it if you did watch it, so I'm not even going to recap it. But I just wanted to say I know my production quality isn't the best here. I'm not really doing this because I'm trying to be a content creator. I'm mainly just doing this because I want to learn and because I feel like explaining things is one of the best ways to learn because it requires me to actually just think of things to say off the top of my head, and that's something I need to work on a lot. So that's why I'm here. But if you're watching, thanks for watching. And in the next episode, I'm going to start actually deploying services and exposing them through a reverse proxy. So stay tuned. Probably same time next week on Friday, I'll have the next episode out. And thanks for watching, guys. Peace.